They were in a group of 12, some fishermen, craftsmen, a tax collector, who walked, ate, and talked with Jesus. But when Christ was crucified, everything changed. These are the stories of the 12 disciples. In Luke chapter 9:23, Christ says, "If anyone comes after me, let him deny himself." No one chooses to die for what they know is false. These eyewitnesses gave up freedom, safety, and even their lives, because they saw Jesus alive and they would not deny it. Let's start with Peter, the man Christ left the key of heaven, according to the gospel. When he was young and a fisherman, he was one of the first apostles to meet and follow Jesus. And he said Jesus is the Messiah. That made him very important in the story of the church. And also I think he was the first disciple to preach to the no-Jewish community. God sent him to a Roman soldier named Cornelius, and Peter turned the key, and the door to the nations swung open. He wasn't perfect, after saying he wouldn't deny Jesus, but he did 3 times on the last night with Christ. But he grew a lot over time and became a key leader in the early church with bold faith. He started churches in Rome and Antioch, the biggest cities in the Roman Empire, right at the heart of power. Then Rome burned in the intense fire, and the Emperor Nero, obsessed with persecuting Christians, blamed the believers to save face. So Peter was sentenced to die by crucifixion. But that was how Jesus died, right? Yes. So Peter didn't want to steal his glory, so he asked to be crucified upside down by choice. That's why the upside-down cross is called St. Peter's cross. It's not actually an Antichrist symbol like some people think. Not at all. Peter was crucified upside down, and they laid him to rest on the Vatican Hill. Andrew, brother of Simon Peter, he was crucified on a diagonal cross. Wild, right? Here's how it unfolded. After Pentecost, Andrew traveled north around the Black Sea, Thrace, and across Greece, preaching the gospel and bringing many people to Christianity. And the local governor hated that. The governor even went home grumbling.
"Hey darling, I had a bad day. Andrew keeps converting more and more people to Christianity."
Well, about that, I'm converting to Christianity too.
So it was in Patras, Achaia. Then the governor ordered Andrew to be crucified, but he knew the standard cross had already become a powerful Christian sign. So he tried to undercut it by rotating the cross and executing Andrew that way. Yet believers turned even that into a bold symbol, and it spread. That's why the diagonal cross or X shape appears on the flag of Scotland. And that's why many Presbyterian churches from Scotland are named for St. Andrew. And relics of Andrew were treasured in Constantinople, Amalfi, and Patras. Next up is James the Great, the son of Zebedee, brother of John, one half of the sons of thunder because of their zeal. He was in the inner circle with Peter and John. He saw the mountain blaze at the Transfiguration and kept watch in the garden. The Jewish leaders disliked him, and tensions rose fast. He didn't live to see the big council in Jerusalem. Herod Agrippa first cut him down by the sword to impress those leaders. Around AD 44, he was the first of the 12 to be martyred. Philip, the man from Bethsaida, early adopter. Jesus says, "Follow me." And Philip not only follows, he grabs his friend, "We've found the one," and brings Nathanael to Jesus. After the resurrection, tradition sends him to Phrygia. In Hierapolis, he keeps preaching until the crowd turns to their idolatry and comes to Christ. But the mayor disliked how crowds kept converting to Christianity, and his frustration grew. Then his own wife and all family converted to Christianity, and the situation exploded. So the mayor ordered to stone him outside of city. Accounts say he's martyred there. To this day, Hierapolis points to his tomb. Bartholomew, he was often identified with Nathanael, was a man from Cana of Galilee. According to the Gospel of John, he first met Jesus through Philip. Tradition holds that after the resurrection, Bartholomew carried the gospel far beyond Judea. His death was as striking as his life. Most traditions recall his martyrdom in Albanopolis of Armenia. He was flayed alive and then beheaded. Next up is Thomas. Thomas, called Didymus, the twin. The apostle remembered for one unforgettable moment. Here's his most famous story. "Dude, have you heard Jesus rose from the dead?"
"What? I doubt it. I want to check myself."
But when Thomas realized it was true, he was amazed and was the first person in the Bible to clearly call Jesus God. After that, he became a bold missionary. Traveling far and wide, Thomas carried the gospel eastward. Origen remembered him in Parthia, while ancient accounts and the Acts of Thomas tell of his mission to India. Around the year 52, he is said to have arrived on the Malabar coast, founding Christian communities that endure to this day. He even reached India. His journey brought him near Mylapore, modern Chennai, where tradition holds he was martyred, struck down with spears around the year 72. His relics were venerated in Edessa and later in Ortona, Italy. But his greatest legacy lies with the living faith of the churches he planted, who still honor him as their apostle. Here's Matthew, also called Levi, was a tax collector in Capernaum. He worked collector for the Roman Empire until Jesus called him out of that life. Matthew then wrote the most famous account of Jesus. Remember the Bible story about the Ethiopian eunuch who became a Christian through Philip. He took the faith back to Ethiopia, so Matthew went to Ethiopia to strengthen the church there. Back then, Ethiopia was a powerful kingdom, and the king was lusting after his own niece. Scandal in the palace. Matthew told him, "You can't do that to her. It's a sin," enraged. The king had Matthew executed by the sword while he was leading a church service. Shocking. It was like celebrating Mass. To this day, Matthew is honored as a major saint by the Ethiopian Orthodox Tewahedo Church, which has existed since the time of Saint Matthew. His gospel continues to call the world to follow Christ. James, the son of Alphaeus, called the Less. In the New Testament, his name is listed among the 12, but little else is said. Was the brother of the Lord and leader of the Jerusalem church. He presided at the Council of Jerusalem, guiding the early community, and according to Josephus, was executed around the year 62, stoned to death. Hegesippus adds that he was first thrown from the temple and then beaten with a club. Among the 12 were Thaddeus, also called Judas, son of James, or Jude, and Simon the Zealot, sometimes called the Cananean. The Gospels tell us little of them beyond their names. Jude appears once in John's Gospel, asking Jesus, "Lord, how is it that you will reveal yourself to us and not to the world?" Simon is remembered by his title, marking his zeal. Tradition credits Jude with the Epistle of Jude, a brief but fiery letter in which he calls himself the brother of James, and urges believers to contend for the faith. After Pentecost, both men are said to have carried the gospel far from Judea. Ancient accounts tell of Jude preaching in Judea, Samaria, and Mesopotamia, while Simon is remembered in Egypt, North Africa, and Persia. The famous Abgar legend links a disciple named. Most traditions say Jude and Simon labored side by side in Persia, and they sealed their testimony with blood. Some accounts say they were beheaded. Others, that Simon was sawn in two. A few later legends even sent Simon westward, as far as Britain. But the memory most enduring is of their shared witness and shared death. Judas Iscariot, one of the 12, chosen by Jesus himself. He served as the group's treasurer, but the Gospels hint at divided loyalties. In the end, he became the betrayer. For 30 pieces of silver, Judas handed his master over to the authorities. In Gethsemane, he marked Jesus with a kiss, the signal to arrest him. Of his death, two traditions remain. Matthew tells us Judas, filled with remorse, returned the silver and hanged himself. The priest used the money to buy the potter's field, called the Field of Blood. Acts records that Judas fell headlong, his body broken open, and the same place was named Akeldama, the Field of Blood. After the betrayal and death of Judas Iscariot, the apostles sought a man to take his place, one who had followed Jesus from the beginning and had witnessed the resurrection. Two were named, and the lot fell to Matthias. Chosen by lot, but confirmed by prayer, Matthias became one of the 12. Tradition tells that he first preached in Judea, then carried the gospel eastward into Cappadocia, and some say even as far as Colchis, on the Black Sea. His death, like so many of the apostles, is remembered in different ways. Some accounts say he was stoned and then beheaded in Jerusalem. Others recall he was crucified in Colchis. His relics have long been venerated, with claims both in Trier, Germany, and in Rome. Matthias, the last chosen, yet counted among the 12, a witness of Christ from the beginning and faithful to the end. Saul of Tarsus, later known as Paul, the man who once persecuted the followers of Jesus, became the apostle to the Gentiles. On the road to Damascus, a blinding light changed everything. Jesus spoke to him, and Saul was transformed into Paul, a chosen instrument to carry the gospel to the nations. Paul traveled extensively, preaching across Asia Minor, Greece, and Rome, founding communities of believers in cities like Corinth, Ephesus, Philippi, and Thessalonica. Through his letters, 13 preserved in the New Testament, he guided the early churches in faith, hope, and love. Paul endured imprisonments, beatings, shipwrecks, and constant danger, yet never wavered in his mission. Tradition holds that he was martyred in Rome under the Emperor Nero, beheaded for the faith he had so boldly proclaimed. Paul, the persecutor turned preacher, the scholar turned evangelist, His writings and journeys shaped the early church, and his witness echoes through every generation that calls upon the name of Christ. John, son of Zebedee, called the beloved disciple, alongside his brother James. He left his father's fishing boat at the call of Jesus, becoming one of the 12. Tradition remembers John not only as a witness, but also as a writer. He is credited with the Gospel of John, 3 epistles, and the Book of Revelation, texts that shaped the faith of generation. After Jerusalem, he traveled to Ephesus, leading and nurturing the early Christian communities. Unlike many apostles, tradition holds that John did not die a violent death, but lived to an old age, continuing to teach and guide the faithful. He was exiled to the island of Patmos, where he wrapped up the Bible by writing the Book of Revelation after experiencing some astonishing visions. So the fact that all these apostles endured horrible, brutal deaths for Christ shows they truly believed what they preached. This was no act. They were terrified when Jesus was crucified and they fled, but after they saw the risen Christ, they became fearless and preached the gospel to the very ends of the earth. And it didn't end there. There were the disciples of the disciples, like Stephen, Polycarp, and Ignatius, and they too were hunted, persecuted, and killed as martyrs in cold blood. Why does their death matter to us today? As we know, nobody chooses to die for what they know is a lie. So the fact that they died for what they saw shouts that it really happened and was true. Always remember, some people were murdered for the very gospel you have today. So don't be ashamed to share it. Christ died for you in public, so do not keep his message in secret. If this video helped you, like it, subscribe, and see you in the next video.